Good morning, everybody. We're live here from the birdhouse. We are a week into May, and that means that it is migration time. And if you have any kind of bird feeders up in your yard, you're probably seeing a good mix of different birds. So, of course, we want to know what those are. You can put any kind of sightings you have in the comments, whether it be in your backyard or when you've been out birding. We love to know what kind of things you've been seeing. Today, we'll give you an update about some of those birds and a couple butterflies too that people have been asking about. And as always, if you have any questions, you can put those in the comments. If you have any sightings, absolutely put those in the comments. Or if you just want to say hi, you can do that too. First, I will mention this picture was sent in maybe even a month ago by Karen, who had sent in this picture of a red admiral and hadn't seen one before. And if that is the case with any of you guys, if you haven't seen a red admiral before, this is probably the year where you will see them, because I have been noticing a whole bunch of them flying around just about everywhere. They are fairly small, so if for size comparison, they're kind of about the same size as that cabbage white butterfly. So I guess I should say a medium-sized butterfly or so, smaller than your monarch butterfly. But they have seriously been flying around all over, at least the Rochester area. So this is another picture of the red admiral. They kind of have an erratic flight, so it's not like sometimes butterflies look very graceful as they're fluttering around in the garden. Not so much this one. The red admiral almost looks like it's had way too much coffee in the morning, and it's just very erratic and kind of is very fast actually too. So if you see a fast moving butterfly in your backyard, it is probably going to be a red admiral. And the picture on the top is what they look like when their wings are spread out and they've got those beautiful red stripes. But then when they're at rest, when their wings are over their body, they're kind of brownish, but you can still see a little bit of a red streak. Their host plant are going to be nettles. So there's false nettle, stinging nettle, anything like that that you might have in your garden. The butterflies will lay their eggs on it. So when we talk about butterfly gardening in general, most of the time when you think about butterfly gardening, or I should say when most people think about butterfly gardening, we think about the nectar producing plants that are great for the adult butterflies, like this red admiral that you might see flying around the garden. But then uh, don't forget about the host plants. And those are the plants that the butterflies will lay their eggs on. And then those caterpillars will eat those plants to continue their whole life cycle. So it's always important to have your host plants and the nectar producing plants. And for the red admiral butterfly, their host plant are going to be nettles. So not necessarily something exciting or thrilling that you'd want in your backyard. But if you have a little patch, assuming they're not the stinging ones, you probably don't want stinging nettle in your yard. But assuming they're not the stinging nettle, you might want to consider just keeping a little bit for those butterflies to lay their eggs on. So lots of red admirals in the area. If you've seen any, definitely put that in the comments. Morning cloaks are out there. They're an early season butterfly, dark brownish in color with the yellow etching around their wings and the blue dots. A couple pictures of those. I snapped those with my cell phone, so they're nothing too exciting. And then lots of cabbage whites. I've been noticing the cabbage whites are back out, flitting about in the garden. So lots of butterflies are starting to emerge. So as more and more come out, we will keep you informed about what you can see in your garden this time of the year. But probably the most exciting bird for most people in their backyards right now are going to be the Baltimore Orioles. And you guys have been sending in some of your pictures of the Baltimore Orioles. This picture was sent in by Lynn, who there's a male Oriole there dipping its bill into the feeder. On May 4th, Mark had Orioles and a hummingbird come to visit. And here's a picture of the male Oriole there eating some jelly. I saw my first Oriole yesterday, not at my feeder yet, although I did hear one in the neighborhood. Haven't seen one at my feeders yet, but they're around. I saw one while out on a little hike in the neighborhood. But here's a Baltimore Oriole up in the trees somewhere from a picture sent in by Mark. And let's see. if this works here. Here's a video that was sent in by Jai. And you can see up at the very top of the tree, there's a bird hopping around, coming down to the feeders, and that is a Baltimore Oriole. I'll replay that again. You can see it in the top, and then it kind of flies down a bit to go down to the bird feeder. So if you haven't seen an Oriole yet, don't get discouraged, because you're not the only one. There's quite a few people who haven't gotten them yet to their backyard, but they are flowing in. The migrants are still flowing in. I'm seeing new and different things every day in the backyard. So there's still absolutely still time. And these pictures were sent in by Jen, who snapped a picture of an Oriole on her Bird Buddy bird feeder, which is really fun. We don't have the Bird Buddy camera here at the birdhouse, but we do have one called Beak View, and we just got in the attachments for the nectar for the hummingbirds. And then there's one that has a hummingbird attachment for the nectar, and then it also has little spikes that you could put the oranges on. So really exciting little attachments there for the Beak View, and it'll also fit on some other cameras as well. And then here's another Oriole photo from her Bird Buddy photo that Jen sent in. Here's another Oriole sent in by Mark. So they are absolutely flowing into the area. We're hearing more reports of the males than the females at this point, but we're right in the middle of spring migration. So the females will probably start rolling in bigger numbers this week. We have the jelly. We have plenty of jelly for the Orioles. We've got the birdberry jelly, and we also have the grape jelly that is made by the Lizzie May Company, where we get all of our bird seed from. So we've got all of that here in stock. Word is out of which one, if one is better for the Orioles than the other, if they prefer, or I guess I should say if they prefer one over the other. But we definitely have both of those in stock. Plenty of it for you for all the Orioles. And we also have the nectar too. So if you're feeding them the nectar and the jelly, we absolutely have all that for you. Now, yesterday, for the first time of the season, I had a gray catbird coming to my feeder, and I noticed while out walking there were quite a few of them around. So they are showing up in some larger numbers. And this is a photo sent in by Mark of a gray catbird, and they'll eat the jelly and also the oranges in your Oriole feeder. So don't be surprised if you see one of these in your backyard if you do happen to have your Oriole feeders out. So this is called the gray catbird. They're very noisy as far as their calls go. They are a mimicking bird, so they mimic the calls of other birds. They repeat each song once before going on to the next, and then at the very end, they'll make a little sound that sounds like a meow, and that's how they get their name. Oops. And then the hummingbirds. The hummingbirds are also starting to come in. They usually arrive a little bit later than the Orioles, but both of those birds are still coming into the area. This picture of a hummingbird was sent in by Mark, who says the hummingbird popped in out of nowhere, picks through the window. So hummingbird reports are starting to come in. So absolutely get those hummingbird feeders out and make sure that nectar is nice and fresh. And you might just see yourself some hummingbirds coming in. Bluebirds, people are reporting bluebirds. Absolutely. If you have a bluebird house out, you probably, and if you have success with getting bluebirds in it, they are probably incubating eggs, or those eggs might have even hatched by now, or they're about to hatch. So bluebirds can have up to 3 broods a year. And from everything we're hearing, they are working on that first brood, whether it be the eggling or the incubating. So bluebirds are out there. And just like how Jen had the picture of the Orioles coming to her Bird Buddy, she also sent in this picture of a bluebird, which is pretty cool, coming to her feeder there. And it looks like it's eating, well, it's not eating anything at the moment, but what's in the feeder there looks like sunflower hearts, which the bluebirds will eat. So they like the mealworms, but they'll also eat things like sunflower hearts. Now, this photo is really cool. This is maybe not your favorite bird to see at your backyard feeders, and this actually kind of shows why. This is a common grackle, and you can see its beak is just full of sunflower seed. It has at least 2, 4, 6, 6, 7 sunflower hearts in its beak right there. So they can really, really go through a lot of birdseed at feeders. But this is such a cool view. This is one reason I like these bird feeder cameras. They're really fun. You get these kind of like up close and personal, extreme close-ups of some of the birds. And this is a really great example of that. But also the detail on the feet of the grackle is really, really cool. You can almost see all the little scales and things on their feet, which is really, really neat. But fun picture here of a common grackle at the Bird Buddy camera. Some other blackbirds that you might see in your backyard are going to be the red-winged blackbirds. The male and female look different from one another. The male is on the left, very, very black in color with the bright red and yellow wings. Sometimes the red can be hard to see and they're more yellow than red, but in flight you can usually see that bright red patch. And then the female looks quite a bit different than the male. She usually has some kind of a yellowish wash on her face and is very stripy, but looks very, very different than the male. But you might see either of them at your feeders, especially as they're coming into town and they're hungry. We hear reports of them at bird feeders. So that's red-winged blackbird. Here's a picture of a female red-winged blackbird. And this is where you will typically see them, is by some kind of a marshy habitat that has reeds or the cattails in it. If you don't want birds like the grackles coming to your backyard feeders, you can put safflower seed out, and that will help limit the number of them. Not every bird likes safflower as much as others. So as far as what eats it, cardinals like it, and the chickadees do. I've been getting a downy woodpecker coming every day eating it, red-bellied woodpecker. But the blackbirds don't really like it. So if you're trying to keep those grackles at bay, limit the number of grackles, limit the number of any kind of blackbird or the starlings, safflower is the way to go. And I've found that the sparrows will still eat it, but they don't eat it as much as they do all the other things in the backyard. So that's one way you can keep some of the big blackbirds at bay. But house finches absolutely love it. I've been getting so many house finches in my backyard since adding more safflower to what I've been offering. So many house finches, which has been really cool. And I've been getting a lot of white-crowned sparrow, and I think you guys have been too. We've been hearing lots of reports of white-crowned sparrow. I've been having them consistently for the past week with a maximum of 3 at a time. I've seen up to that number all at once, which is pretty exciting. So they tend to just kind of pass through. Probably won't have them here all summer long, but right now, white-crowned sparrow, be on the lookout for them underneath your bird feeders, especially. If you have a larger feeder, like a hopper feeder or tray feeder, they might come to that too, something with a lot of perching room. But really cool bird, very gray in color with a very bright white and black striped head. So white-crowned sparrow, really cool bird. And then another bird you might get at your safflower or your sunflower seed feeder is going to be the rose-breasted grosbeak. These are 2 males right here, a picture sent in by Stephanie, who had them in her backyard. So quite a few reports of rose-breasted grosbeaks also in backyards. Now, things you might not typically see in your backyard, although now that it's migration time, things are passing on through, so you might hear something that you don't typically hear in the tops of your trees, even though it won't come down to your bird feeder. Here's some other migrants that are coming through the area. I can't recommend the Merlin app highly enough. If you haven't downloaded it yet, I would highly, highly recommend it. It will listen to the bird calls that you can hear, and it will tell you exactly what they are. So it's really fun. I had a Nashville warbler a couple times in my backyard over the past week, which I would have never been able to identify on my own without help from that app. So you never know what you'll see or hear in your backyard. But here's some birds that have been reported locally and some photos that you guys have sent in. This picture here is of a blue-headed vireo, and this was sent in by Mark, who says, blue-headed vireo high up catching those bugs in the bright sunshine. Female grosbeak, which is right here, found a snack too. So the picture here is of the male rose-breasted grosbeak. And this is what the female looks like. So she does look quite a bit different as far as her coloration goes, but as far as the beak and the size of the bird, she's quite similar to the male rose-breasted grosbeak. So they are definitely around, and they come to backyard bird feeders also. Oh, this is the picture of the blue-headed vireo here. You can't really see the blue head all too well, but this is what the blue-headed vireo looks like, again, passing through the area for migration time. And they can be quite chatty too, so you might hear them call. But the vireo you're probably most likely to hear right now is the warbling vireo, which is this bird. And they're not very striking as far as colors go, but they do sing quite a bit. Other vireos you might hear are going to be Philadelphia vireo. As we get on into summer, we'll hear more of the red-eyed vireo, which as an adult do have a bright red eye, which is pretty cool. But the warbling vireo, there's a lot of them out there right now, and a lot of them singing. So keep your ears out for them and see if you can pinpoint them in the trees. They hop around a bit like the warblers do, but just usually a little bit easier to spot than the warblers. Eastern kingbird. So we've talked about the different types of flycatchers that are coming back to the area over the past couple of weeks. And this is another one. This is called an eastern kingbird. And they're pretty easy to identify because they've got that white tip on their tail. And this photo sent in by Mark really shows that very well. And it almost looks like they've got their shoulders up as far as posture goes. But this is a type of flycatcher called the eastern kingbird. And they are coming back into the area also. Thrushes, there's different thrushes that you might see out birding or even passing through into your backyard. The eastern bluebird that I showed the photos of earlier is a thrush, is a type of thrush in the thrush family. The most common one you'll see in your backyard, especially if you have a bird bath out right now, is going to be the American robin. But then there's also birds like the hermit thrush and veery that are passing through people's backyards as they find a place to settle down and nest. And both of these birds will be here all summer long. But the hermit thrush has a spotted breast and it has a reddish colored tail, and that's how you can identify it. The reddish colored tail really does it. And then the veery doesn't have much spotting on it at all, and it's a very light brown color. So a couple other birds you might happen to see in your backyard. Another bird that is sometimes mistaken for things like a hermit thrush is this bird. This is called the brown thrasher. But they're going to be quite a bit larger than these other thrushes. And if you look at the hermit thrush, if you look at its eye, it has a dark colored eye. Same with the veery. The brown thrasher has a very striking yellow eye. And the brown thrasher, like its name suggests, it does thrash around its bill on the ground as it usually will flip over leaves and things like that, looking for bugs on the ground. The brown thrasher is really closely related to that gray catbird too. So they're in the same mimicking family, where the gray catbird sings a song once and goes on to the next song. The brown thrasher will repeat its song usually twice. And then if you get the mockingbirds, they repeat songs 3 times in a row, usually, sometimes more, before moving on to the next. So we have those 3 mimicking species of birds that are in the area. So brown thrasher is pretty cool. Sometimes people report them in their backyards passing through. But we're definitely getting into warbler time, and on Saturday we'll go more in depth with the different types of warblers that are coming through. But right now, this is one of the most common ones you'll see. This is a yellow rumped warbler. Like its name suggests, it has a little yellow patch on the back of its rump right there. Sometimes people call them butterbutts because they have that bright yellow patch. A lot of them are out and about right now. I saw a whole bunch of them out yesterday, as well as the yellow warblers. And yellow warblers sing a lot. And so if you are using that Merlin app, you can easily identify that yellow warbler call. I even had one that's been in the backyard over the past few days. So even in your backyard, you might just get yellow warbler. They're bright yellow. They don't really have the black on them like a goldfinch would, so that's one way to identify them. They'll have the streaking on their breast, but they sing so much, and they tend to, kind of like a song sparrow, sit on the top of a branch and just belt out their songs. So you might just happen upon them. And Mark sent in a whole bunch of warbler photos that he took at Mendon Ponds, including this one. This is called a blue-winged warbler. It's got a black streak that goes through its eye, and it does have a bluish colored wing. And then there's the common yellowthroat, another pretty chatty bird, a chatty type of warbler that has a very, very dark mask, much, much bigger than the blue-winged warbler, a lot more black covering its eye. This is my personal favorite. I love this bird, the Blackburnian warbler. It says Blackburnian warbler catching bugs. So it looks like it was probably picking bugs off of the tree that had those nice blooms on it. But I love this bird. This is probably my ultimate favorite. So I've got to go out to try to find some of those over the next couple of days. This is a cool one. If you ever see something climbing up and down the trees, we've talked about different birds that do that, like the nuthatches, of course, the brown creeper we've talked about a whole bunch of times, but now you might get another bird that does that now that we're in migration season. This is the black and white warbler. And this is another photo that was sent in by Mark, who says, had a black and white warbler high up in my tree in the backyard. Merlin ID picked it up. And a Nashville warbler. You never know what's passing through in your yard. Yeah, the black and white warbler has a call that sounds kind of like a squeaky wheel. It's always compared to, although it's not the only one that sounds like a squeaky wheel, at least to me. So again, you never know what you'll hear in your backyard. And I also have been getting a Nashville warbler picked up on the Merlin app. So the Nashvilles are definitely flowing through as well. Now here's a Cape May warbler picture that was up in the trees. It's got kind of a reddish wash on its face. We also had a customer who sent in a video of a Cape May warbler who was coming to her pond and splashing, or a couple of them splashing around in the pond. So if you've got a bird bath out there, especially one that has any kind of moving water, this is the time of year where you might get some interesting migratory birds like Cape May warblers or scarlet tanagers coming to it. You never know what you might find coming to your water source. But this is a Cape May warbler, and Mark says, spotted a Cape May warbler catching bugs next to wild wings at Mendon. And then not a warbler, but another small migratory bird is the blue-gray gnatcatcher. And this one has a black stripe that goes over its eye. It almost looks like it's angry, like it's got a furrowed kind of eyebrow. So a really cool bird there. And yellow-bellied sapsuckers. We've been getting interesting woodpecker reports. Of course, yellow-bellied sapsucker, which are migratory and tend to be more common in the spring and summer months. But then we've also been getting reports of red-headed woodpeckers coming to people's backyards. We've had 2 or 3 customers over the past week who've gotten red-headed woodpeckers in their backyard. Now, this is a picture of a red-bellied woodpecker that Jen, who had those Bird Buddy photos, sent in. And the red-bellied woodpecker is a pretty common backyard bird, but red-headed woodpeckers are not by any means. They are not very common at all anymore. But a few people have reported them over the past week coming into their backyards, and one of them was even in the 19th ward, right in the city. So just like I keep saying, you never know what you might see at your backyard. These were photos that Mark had sent in from Cayuga Lake State Park about a little over a month ago, but people are getting them in their backyards at their suet feeders. And of course, herons are back too. So if you're by the water, take some time to look for herons or look for things like bitterns that might be hiding in the cattails and in the reeds. This is a great blue heron. There are green heron, which are smaller. There's also black crowned night heron, which come out at dusk. So some different things that you might see as you are out this time of the year. Looks like some of you guys have comments. Ed is on and says 2 male and 1 female oriole are visiting our feeders, but one of the males is quite the bully. If he's around when the other one comes by, he will chase it all over the yard. No hummers yet, but the feeders are out and ready. Also seeing the red admirals out and about in our neighborhood near Mendon Ponds Park. So we hear a lot about the hummingbirds being territorial by feeders, and it sounds like Ed has a very territorial Oriole also, which is pretty funny. I noticed some cardinals were being very territorial in my backyard the other day. So it could be that they're competing for mates, they're competing for the food source. So it sounds like he's not playing nicely with the others. Lynn is on. She said, so many Orioles this year, many males and females, waiting to hear the catbirds. Haven't heard any yet. Well, just you wait because I'm sure you will get some soon. If yesterday what I saw outside had any indication, there are a lot of them coming in. Timothy says, I can't believe the numbers of Orioles this year. Last year, we seem to only have two. This year, at least six. So Timothy is getting a lot of Orioles out there. So might be going through a lot of jelly. Kevin says, where's the best place to put a nesting ball? That's a good question. I would put it anywhere where you're already seeing bird activity. So if you've got a bird feeder or feeders out that are popular, I would put it by them. I keep mine just tucked in a bush, and the birds absolutely just pull it all apart. It's a bush that they just tend to sit in anyway, so they find it super easily. But you can't really go wrong with putting it just about anywhere. But I would put it somewhere where you already have birds coming with some kind of regularity. And let's see, it looks like Margaret is on, and she says, agree with the above comments on the abundance. A great year for the Orioles, multiple males and a couple of females gobbling up the jelly. Really, really cool. I should mention too that although most people get Baltimore Orioles at their feeder, we have had a couple of people report orchard Orioles at their bird feeder, which are similar to the Baltimore Orioles, but the males are much darker in color. So if you happen to see anything like that, absolutely try to snap a picture and send it in to us so we can share it on our next broadcast. It looks like that's everybody's comments and questions for the day. We'll be back on Saturday with another update about the different migrants that are coming in and how you can attract them to your backyard. So until then, if you've got any photos, absolutely send them in to us and we will share them. And have a great week, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.